about sea spaces, and he spoke, of course, in an operational and strategic sense. And today I'm using the phrase geographies more from a historical and cultural lens that the CNS alluded to in his opening remarks. So the 5 nations represented here, Singapore, Oman, India, Kenya, and South Africa, in a sense, were interacting for millennia, or the countries that, or the peoples that form the part of those geographies for a long time, if you take a historical view. And there are enough markers of that interaction for 2,000, 3,000 years. And then the word order was upended when Vasco da Gama sailed around South Africa, came to Kenya, Malindi, from where he was led by an Arab navigator, Ibn Majid, who was also called the Moor of Gujarat, and who brought him to Calicut in 1498. And for next 500 years, you had a different word order. After World War II, you had a new word order again, in which all of us sort of were decolonized and did nation building. And at the end of the Cold War and the fall of the wall, we started then looking outwards. And I think this phase of maritime collaboration is a manifestation of how the world has changed and how we're moving closer over the last 3 decades or so. And one of the interesting aspects of the post-Cold War development is the Milan. It started, as you're aware, in 1995. And I was speaking to Admiral Shekhawat, who was the CNS when Milan started in 1995, the pioneer. And he said an interesting thing. He said, we started Milan because it started in Port Blair. There was misconception amongst many nations that Port Blair was being used as a secret naval base, and we wanted to be transparent about what Port Blair was being used for. So it connects very beautifully with this session of transparency. Now, of course, when we talk of transparency here, we're talking of more in the operational sense, in the maritime domain awareness sense, but I think India contributed in a conceptual level to that transparency with the Milan series. And for that, we have 4 very outstanding speakers. I begin this talk inviting Colonel Ung Shin Shi. He is from the Republic of Singapore Navy. He joined the Singapore Armed Forces in 1997. He trained overseas in the Imperial College of Science, Technology, and Medicine with a Bachelor of Science, majoring in mathematics. And then subsequently, he did a staff college in China. More importantly, the colonel has commanded RSS Freedom, a fearless-class patrol vessel, and thereafter RSS Formidable, a formidable class frigate, and then he went on to command the flotilla. He has done wide array of tenures in the plans, restructuring, in the ministers, as a minister's speechwriter, in senior operational appointment, and then he was appointed as the Deputy Fleet Commander in November 2021. So, Colonel, 10 minutes. I'll give a bell at 8. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commodore, for pronouncing my name absolutely perfectly. A Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Naval Command, a National Maritime Security Coordinator, Vice Admiral G. Ashok Kumar, senior leaders from partner navies. A very good morning. The Republic of Singapore Navy is honored to be invited to participate in Milan 2022. Singapore is familiar with Milan as we have been having the privilege of participating in every edition since its inception in 1995. I would also like to thank the Indian Navy for the invitation to speak at the IMS. Many important points were raised during the last 3 sessions, enabling us to exchange our views on the many challenges and shared concerns regarding the use of the seas. Now, the seas are important to us, as maritime trade is the world's economic lifeline. With about 60% of the world's oil trade and 90% of global trade transported through the sea, making the sea secure is crucial in sustaining our global economy. With the high volume of trade that passes through the important waterways, a slight disruption could cause reverberations for many countries. We saw how this can happen from the unfortunate incident of Ever Given's blockage of Suez Canal almost a year ago. The incident caused at least 300 ships to be delayed in their journey and delivery of goods and led to billions of dollars of estimated losses. Many other factors also have the potential to adversely affect the flow of trade in the maritime domain. Sea robbery, piracy, contraband smuggling, and human trafficking are just some examples. These threats have the ability to disrupt the global economy. They are transboundary in nature and can take place across a vast expanse in the maritime area of operations. It is usually challenging for one nation to be able to deal with them alone, and therefore necessitates countries to work together to tackle these threats. Singapore has had the privilege of collaborating with 34 other countries in the Gulf of Aden as part of the Counter-Piracy Combined Maritime Forces since 2009. This partnership embodied the idea that a whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as we collaborated strongly with our partner navies and contributed meaningfully to the security of the ships plying through the Gulf of Aden. Beyond the tangible benefit of tackling transboundary threats, the collaboration also allowed for closer cooperation at sea, building confidence amongst partners in the process. Multilateral exercises such as Milan, including the IMS we are gathered for today, similarly enable this objective. The Singapore Navy supports this. We also organize the International Maritime Security Conference every 2 years, and we understand deeply the significance and the mutual benefits of navies coming together and upholding rules-based order through dialogue and signaling our respect for international institutions. We certainly hope that through all our commitment and participation, we can look past our differences and instead identify areas of convergence where we can work together. Beyond sea exercises and shore conferences, there is scope for substantial collaboration in shore exercises. An example is the Maritime Information Sharing Exercise, or MARIX, a maritime security-focused exercise organized biannually by the Singapore Navy since 2009. In addition, last year, we hosted more than 160 participants across 37 countries, comprising partners not just from navies, but also Coast Guard, law enforcement agencies, and the wider shipping community. Realistic MARSEC scenarios were simulated by our shipping partners, and participants practiced the coordination and sharing of key information through their op centers in order to prevent a MARSEC incident. We exercised operational linkages and exchanged best practices, truly testament to the shared commitment amongst our partners to promote information exchange and cooperation. Outside of exercises, an incident similar to one of our MARIC scenarios occurred in real life. In April 2018, an illegal fishing vessel, STS-50, was captured after 10 long years of evading capture by international law agencies. Over the years, it had evaded authorities' detection by flying more than 8 flags at different times. The rogue vessel was subjected to a purple notice by Interpol, which urged merchant vessels to report any sightings of STS-50, as it was notorious for going dark. The Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center in Madagascar was alerted on STS-50's whereabouts by the 8 African countries as part of the Fish Eye Partnership. The IFC at Madagascar then passed the information to IFC Singapore through the French International Liaison Officer, who is stationed in our IFC. We then queued operational responses by passing the photos, the vessel details, and the positional updates of STS-50 to various OPCENTs in our region through the ILOs. This seamless flow of information amongst partners, facilitated by the ILOs, eventually made it possible for the Indonesian Navy, TNI-AL, to intercept and capture the fishing vessel off Subang, Indonesia. A very good ending after almost 10 years of trying to intercept this vessel, and a clear example of the significant mutual good the collaboration between all of us can derive. Two key factors featured prominently in the successful capture of STS-50. First is the ILOs, who leveraged the operational linkages they had with their national agencies and shared quickly with one another the information which was cardinal in the eventual arrest. These ILOs embody the very essence of cooperation within the international community. And we see this firsthand in Singapore, where we have hosted close to 200 ILOs from 26 countries to date. The second factor is the information sharing platform that underpins this successful collaboration. Until some years back, there were no means to share information between various OPCENTs and the shipping community. So the Singapore Navy launched the IFC's Real-Time Information Sharing System, or IRIS, in 2019 to play an operationally effective role in this area. The system facilitates sharing of wide shipping information and provides a live recognized maritime picture by fusing information including MAIS and various categories of additional data from our network of partners to facilitate real-time monitoring and collaboration. We have deployed this information sharing system in many multinational exercises, including the ADMM Plus Maritime Security Field Training Exercise in 2019, co-chaired by Singapore and Korea. A total of 18 countries participated in this exercise, and they were tasked to coordinate a range of operational responses against a simulated attack by an organized crime group on a fictional offshore installation. So IRIS provided shared awareness amongst partners through the real-time positional updates of both the participating ships as well as the vessels of interest. So with this usage of IRIS, the ADMM Plus exercise brought our navies together to collaborate across a wide spectrum of maritime security operations, contributing towards our efforts in keeping our sea lines of communication open and secure for all. Now, the collaboration between our nations, both ashore and at sea, augurs well for the future. The many challenges we face in the maritime domain require this collaboration between us. Hopefully, we will continue to look past our differences and build strong links and partnerships. I'm optimistic that this will go a long way in us tackling challenges together in future and achieve safe and secure seas for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kanerji. You actually, like a record sprinter, shaved off a bit of your own time. And I think that gives us a bit more to discuss. And I think the example, the illustrative example that he gave of lots of collaboration leading to a capture of merchant ship, errant merchant ship after 10 years, tells us both the opportunities and challenges. The fact that it was done is great. The fact that it took 10 years also tells you some of the possible challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is from the Royal Navy of Oman, Commodore Jassim Muhammad Ali Belushi.
Yes.
Right. Commodore Jassim was commissioned in August 1992. He's had a very busy career at sea. He's been navigation, gunnery officer, warfare officer, and thereafter he commanded ships. And he then went up to handle both the operations and plans like are from Singapore. He also holds degrees in naval and military science, graduating with a Master of Arts from NDC in US. At the moment, he is the Director General of Plans and Operations in Headquarters RNO.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Peace upon you. Respected Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Naval Command, Vice Admiral Biswaja Das Gupta, ambassadors, distinguished guests, senior officers, mariners, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. To begin with, please allow me to express my heartfelt thanks and sincere gratitude to the Indian Navy for the kind invitation and generous hospitality. It is really tremendous achievement to gather and host 40 different nations in such event, Milan 2022. So we commend you for that. I think Milan 2022 theme speaks out itself. There is no doubt that the importance of the three pillars shown in the theme will be the takeaway from this exercise. Enhancing transparency in the maritime domain is quite important. To detect, deter, and defeat threats as early as distance from countries' interest in possible time. This will allow and enable accurate, dynamic, and full spectrum of maritime threats and will allow sustain the full applications of the law to ensure freedom of navigation and the efficient flow of commerce. Now, as we all know that COVID has demonstrated to be a virus foe on law enforcement agencies in general and navies in particular. The pandemic resulted the loss of lives, stopped operational ships from operating, and disrupt supply chains. Consequently, the pandemic affecting the monitoring of the maritime domain. The Indian Ocean, in general, is a very busy ocean. It covers 20% of the world's waters. According also to US Energy Information Agency, 21% of the global petroleum liquids consumptions goes through the Strait of Hormuz. On the other hand, the Strait of Malacca sees 76% of the oil transit to the Far East. Keeping the flow of energy safe, avoiding oil pollutions and maritime environment violators is one of the many maritime challenges. According to several agencies, drugs and small arms trafficking has increased during the years of the pandemic. All above present challenges to the maritime domain and are significant strategic concerns. Transparency is needed in the maritime domain to overcome such challenges. Transparency can be achieved by sharing unclassified information between maritime security centers. The sharing of information advances intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, the ISR. Furthermore, it is more effective than unclassified data sources, analytical process, and tools available in the commercial sector. The sharing of unclassified information could be leveraged to make the maritime domain awareness data more accessible and productive. The Sultanate of Oman started and made headway in increasing the transparency of maritime awareness through its Maritime Security Center recently commissioned. However, the road is long. The Royal Navy of Oman achieved that by signing MOUs with neighboring countries. The objective of the MOU is to speed up the flow of information and enhance reaction time to crises and illegal activities. The exchanging of information allows production of near real-time shareable information from which all authorized interested partners can benefit. Oman and India signed an MOU for exchange of white shipping information on 27th September last year. This MOU facilitates information exchange on merchant shipping traffic through the IFC, IOR, India, and Maritime Security Center, Oman, and contribute to enhance maritime safety and security in the region. Just to elaborate on the white shipping agreement, it refers to exchange of prior information on the movement and identity of commercial, non-military merchant vessels. So ships would be classified into three categories. The white ship would be the commercial ships, gray ships would be the military vessels, and the black would be the illegal vessels. But how important is this agreement? This agreement will help in exchange information on the maritime shipping traffic movements. It will help in enhancing maritime security and safety in the region. The Indian Navy, in its global outreach, has so far associated with 21 countries and, correct me if I'm wrong, 22 multinational agencies which help in sharing information related to maritime activities in the Indian Ocean region, IOR, in real time. The signed MOU with India is an important event and is a vital example of ways to increase transparency in the maritime domain and enhance opportunity by completing each other's efforts through the collaboration of information and partnerships. With the increase of the maritime security challenges, the key to expanding maritime awareness is transparency. MOUs can achieve that between countries such as the example presented between India and Oman. As you have seen on the slide, there are also so many visits and sign of such MOUs with other agencies or regional agencies and the Maritime Security Center in Oman. In conclusion, maritime domain awareness is a concern of every maritime nation, and international cooperation is a must if the global supply chain is to be effectively protected and safety and security of cargo assured. Transparency basically is the need for better understanding and implementation of common operating picture for many agencies engaged in activities in the maritime domain. Finally, I think Milan 2022 has provided us great opportunity to exchange views and furthermore explore areas and means of promoting collaboration and cooperation between our navies. Once again, thank you for the excellent endeavor and memorable events. My best wishes to you all, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Commodore Al-Balushi. I think the key takeaway he stressed was maritime domain awareness. Make it more accessible, make it more productive, and make it faster. And he gave certain examples of that. I think if you see the IOR IFC presentation, in a way, it sort of flows into what our friend from Oman is saying. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is from South Africa, Admiral Handsome Thamsaga Matsani. Admiral Matsani is currently the Director Maritime Warfare of South Africa Navy. He's had a very distinguished career. He's a master's. He's a submarine commanding officer, and then he was submarine squadron commander. So, Admiral, over to you. 10 minutes.
Thank you. Singapore, give me another 2 minutes.
Yes.
We have been cooperating, integration, but we still have a problem. Why? Vice Admiral Das Gupta, Flag Officer Commanding in Chief, Eastern Command, Fleet, Senior Delegate, Admiral, Flag Officers, Officer Commanding, Senior Officer, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Namaste. It is my honor to extend the felicitation of the South African Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Hlongwane, for the Indian Navy to host such a magnitude event, Exercise Milan. And on behalf of the South African delegation, I further thank you for the warm welcome and a genuine hospitality we receive in India for this Exercise Milan. That is my direction for the presentation that I'm about to do. I've heard a lot of speakers, and they've helped me to compile this introduction. Collaboration starts with agreeing on the concept. We have agreed on the concept. We need a secure maritime domain and a good governance on it. But why are we still not achieving it? Where do we draw a line between collaboration and protecting our own interests? Where does your own interest start? If the vessel comes from South Africa, it must pass Indian Ocean to come to India to deliver something. So the whole Indian Ocean, it is your interest. Maritime threats are evolving, but our cooperation is not catching up. Why? Collaboration is the key to success. It is the key to success, but there's something missing before this collaboration. Then why are we collaborating? Why our collaboration don't achieve secure maritime domain and good governance? Ladies and gentlemen, mankind is fascinated and has been fascinated and dependent on the maritime domain because the medium of the transportation, trade routes, sovereignty, leisure, resources, medium of information, the submarine cables that we talk about. Due to the nature of the Earth, shape, and the globalization, all nations have a common interest in the maritime domain. As nations continue to unlock the maritime domain potential, criminality follows suit. All these have been mentioned. Let me not repeat it, but one only be mentioned, I think, once, the state-sponsored illegal activities, fishermen as paramilitary, or fishermen as militia. This criminality disrupts nation common interest. Nations have common responsibility for maritime domain security and governance. A near real-time maritime domain awareness is crucial. Nations are not equal in capabilities, development, and economy. No nation has the capability to keep the maritime domain safe alone or have a full MDA alone. Therefore, collaboration and partnership are key for near real-time and comprehensive maritime domain awareness. Numerous collaboration and partnership already exist. That's why we have the product of UNCLOS. IONS is a partnership, and we want to collaborate. IMO has come from collaborating and partnership. Military cooperation, bilateral, multilateral agreement for MDA, under the Djibouti Code of Conduct, a lot of fusion centers that have been mentioned. But why is it so difficult to improve on this collaboration and partnership for real-time and comprehensive MDA? The answer is the lack of transparency. That is the answer, the lack of transparency. Therefore, transparency is the prerequisite for any collaboration and partnership to work or progress. What are you going to collaborate on if you are not transparent? You're building one half, I build one half. How are we going to combine them if we are not transparent to each other to make sure it works well? That's why it doesn't work, because we are not transparent. Transparency means open access to information. There's two dimensions of transparency that are very important, and they go hand in hand. This sharing half information doesn't work. Visibility and inferability. Easily located of information, correct and complete to draw accurate conclusion. We're not getting there because we're not being transparent to each other. Hence, we're still talking this point. We have been collaborating for long. Why it's so difficult? Because the maritime domain have been securitarized. Hence, maritime security. That is a problem. And what happened when it's securitarized? The core dimension of maritime security are human security, economic development, marine environment, and the important one is national security. And Busan, when he mentioned the element of national security, one of them is military. Where military is involved, then there comes intelligence. Now, when I'm transparency, am I exposing myself to the adversaries? Am I allowing myself for network-centric warfare or sustainable? State sponsors illegal activities. Militia, are they going to use this? Hence, will lead to lack of transparency. That have led to lack of transparency. Transparency, it builds on the notion that information matters, has the ability to improve, empower, and create awareness. Unfortunately, intelligence also follows suit. The question maybe should be how to improve transparency in order to increase the opportunity for collaboration and partnership, to better maritime domain awareness as the foundation for secure maritime domain. Some of the recommendations that they already been mentioned by my fellow speaker here. Let's promote and expand a regional project on software information sharing, includes the space industry and regional program from which environment and marine-related issues, such as the nanotechnology satellites. These are cheap satellites, very small. 9 of them will cover South Africa. So I'll guess that not more than 20 will cover the island of Mauritius, which has huge EEZ. but they don't have the fund to do it. So we need to help them. The Global Monitoring of Environment and Security, that also sponsored the African Marine and Coastal Operation for South Africa, MARCO South. Let's tap into this. This will assist us that we have the same information, and then we will be able to gain confidence and trust, and then we can be more transparent. But the important one, enhancing capability of less affording state. The problem with the less affording state is they show you their cost because that's what they need. It's not the white shipping that's a problem. It's the black shipping that is a problem. And you don't get it on AIS. You need from the state. But the state can't see what's happening in their own EEZ. So let's assist them in getting this right. Representation of all affected states in the fusion center. I'm happy that's happening, but let's continue for everyone to participate into it, then they can see what's happening and they can operate for them. The continuation of dialogue, such as this seminar, will assist in understanding this problem of transparency / MDA. Let's make all effort to boost that transparency because by improving confidence and trust in sharing software information. After that, the harder part of the information, software is non-militaries, and then when you become trust to each other, then the harder part, which is military more related, which that's what we're worrying about, this intelligence, then it will come naturally. This could result in a full transparency in the maritime domain, and as a result, opportunity for collaboration and partnership in the maritime domain will prevail. No nation can achieve maritime security alone. Collaboration and partnership is the only way forward. Unfortunately, transparency is the prerequisite for collaboration and partnership to be productive, efficient, and effective. Jai.
Thank you, Admiral. And though he threatened to take 2 minutes bonus that the speaker from Singapore had given, ultimately he did not do that. So he gave me 2 minutes to introduce our next speaker. And I think the Admiral brought out some key points, one of them being the tension between intelligence and transparency in terms of sharing. Also, he made some good suggestions. I was particularly taken up by his suggestion about technology and nanotechnology satellites. The Admiral began talking of how mankind has been fascinated with the oceans. And that mankind, or that humankind, in a sense, was born in Kenya, as I think Admiral Paparo said yesterday. Our common DNA goes to one lady in East Africa. So if that illustrates the beauty of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or We Are the World, I think Kenya epitomizes that in many ways. 10 years ago, about this time, I was saying Kwaheri or farewell after 3.5 years in Kenya, when we were actively involved with many other countries in counter-piracy activities when piracy was at its peak. Today we've seen the effects of that, even if it's been done a little inefficiently, as Admiral Montikana says, that it's taken us some time to put piracy down, and counter-piracy results are there for all to see. I invite my friend from Kenya, General John Sankale Kiswa. General John started, he was commissioned in August 1992. He's a seaman officer, specialist in navigation like the CNC. In fact, he did his long ND in India. He has commanded the Manda Bay. He's commanded the Kenyan ships and the flotilla. He has also undergone all the higher defense courses, done time in plans and operations, and he's presently the fleet commander of Kenya Navy. So to my friend from Kenya, Jambo, and you may begin, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Flag Officer Commanding in Chief Eastern Command, Admiral Dasgupta, Excellencies, Heads of Navies present, Flag Officers, distinguished delegates, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The challenge always of speaking the last person in the same topic has a tendency of repeating certain issues, but I hope you'll get one or two that are unique. So, allow me to take this early opportunity to thank the Indian government and the Navy in particular for the invitation extended to Kenya to attend this auspicious exercise. We are very honored as the Kenyan delegation. And also, I'm very delighted to be back in India after about 13 years when I did my specialization course in long navigation in INS Venturiti. And the in charge of that college then was none other than the Vice Admiral Dasgupta. So, sir, I'm very glad to be here, and I'm sure you are happy to see your product in front of you. So it is a great honor today to contribute to this discussion on contemporary topic on transparency in the maritime domain, opportunities for collaboration and partnership. So the oceans are of fundamental importance to our existence because some of the following areas, which may not be exhaustive, are very important. Oceans are birthplace of weather systems and controllers of climate. Major reservoirs of natural resources, sites of recreation, virtual schoolrooms for educators, natural laboratories for science, highways for maritime commerce, and buffer zones for national and homeland security, and also a source of our livelihood. Yet, the maritime domain presents the biggest challenge globally due to its vastness, complicated by the need to safeguard international transport by sea. These challenges include, but are not limited to, preventing accidents and disasters, fighting transnational organized crimes, such as piracy and trafficking of narcotics and weapons, addressing fisheries and crimes, and preventing other environmental crimes for the international security, all of which seriously impact the security and economic well-being of all states, which increasingly are interconnected by their reliance on a largely sea-based international trading system. Yet, these water bodies are also affected by sovereignty limitations, which affect the maritime domain as witnessed in the various contestations over maritime boundaries. This therefore calls for the enhanced international and regional cooperation, which can only be guaranteed by transparency in the maritime domain, as any significant disruption of our global maritime transportation system, for example, would have far-reaching impact on the international shipping that the world economy depends on. We all know the impact and disruption that was brought about by the piracy off the coast of Somalia and the larger East Africa. And what happened, or the response that followed thereafter, and the cost of transportation for the goods that went into the hinterland. And this can also be attributed to what is happening in the West African coast, particularly in the Gulf of Guinea. Transparency in the maritime domain implies openness, communication, and accountability in the various activities that we as providers of maritime security and other maritime stakeholders conduct in the maritime domain. For example, the key sources of maritime security data are generated by sometimes non-military means, the commercial and customs information concerning ships, cargoes, and crews. However, sharing of this information is affected by confidentiality concerns,
which include commercial sensitivities, the potential for discrimination against particular vessels, and security. Maritime security is a global concern. Maritime security is a major global challenge, and we have all heard from many speakers that no single country has adequate capacity in terms of capability and resources to cover not even on EEZ alone, but also the high seas. For example, the response on piracy off the coast of Somalia and the fight against drug trafficking and other transboundary crimes. It entails safeguarding international transport by sea, preventing disasters, fighting transnational organized crimes like piracy and trafficking of narcotics. The changing nature of maritime threats calls for greater understanding of the operational environment and better cooperation. The regional and international strategic partnerships present an excellent window in exploiting opportunities and addressing challenges presented by the maritime domain. Arrangements that ignore this fact risk becoming counterproductive. Existing corporations rely on voluntary adherence and not binding treaties, which demands mutual trust and transparency. The culture and tradition of secrecy at sea encourages these maritime crimes, such as contraband, narcotics, and weapons of mass destruction, among other disorders. Besides, dealers in commodities don't want competitors to know the sources and destinations of their cargo. Fishermen don't want others to fish their own favorite spots. Ownership of commercial vessels is often concealed through a network of contracts and paper corporations, and the threat perception is not universally shared. And therefore, when the threat perception is not common, then the solutions offered will invariably be different, and so will the motivation to do so. Transparency by all actors in the maritime domain breeds trust, which is an essential precondition to the establishment of partnerships and collaboration across the security sector, which ensures improved maritime domain awareness and sharing of information. Some of the opportunities for collaboration, particularly biased in the Eastern Africa, we are saying that there are a number of structures that are there, such as the information centers, one in Madagascar, the RCOC in Seychelles, and other centers and other initiatives such as the Djibouti Code of Conduct. Yet, most of these countries, or littoral states and island states, are still developing states, and therefore they require some of these institutions and structures to be sustained so that we continue the aspect of MDA, maritime domain awareness. Kenya is a signatory of this arrangement, and in fact we have a liaison officer in the RMFIC in Madagascar, and we have been very active in participation of most of the maritime security program sponsored by the European Union and other partners. The other aspect of collaboration is building capacity of local players. A significant effort by international partners such as IMO, UNODC, European Union, and numerous bilateral partners have focused developing MDS capacity ashore, forgetting that players at sea, such as fishermen and other sea users, remain the most important source of intelligence from the sea. Building capacity for these groups under the frameworks such as Fish Eye Africa remain very crucial in larger MDA development. This could be another area for collaboration. And more importantly, there's need for coordinated capacity building among the shareholders. The other aspect of collaboration would be information sharing, which I think every speaker here has talked about. And we are saying most of the maritime security threats, such as narcotics, trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism, and others, are transboundary in nature. It is therefore very essential that platforms and structures for this sharing between littoral state islands and even units of seafarers are supported. I think the last point I would talk about is the enhancement of presence of platforms at sea. The presence of law enforcement platforms at sea act as a deterrent to criminal activities. Most littoral states and islands lack the capacities and capabilities to be present in the maritime domain when need arises. Initiatives which are meant to support collective response and pooling of resources to respond to maritime threats are very highly encouraged. In conclusion, transparency in maritime domain will enhance maritime collaboration and partnerships and need to be emphasized, and such forums like Milan 22 provide these opportunities of collaboration and networking for a big number of maritime stakeholders. The development of new and linking to the existing architectures for information collection and sharing constitutes the most significant new tangible element for enhanced collaboration. Ensuring future stability of the maritime domain in post-pandemic times will require making it more transparent, efficient, predictable, sustainable, and resilient. Thank you very much, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Asante General. He has again brought lots of points from presence of platforms, capacity building, but I think the two takeaways that I found particularly interesting was one where he talked of adherence to laid down norms rather than binding treaties, and then of course he talked of threat perceptions being different for different countries and how you can sort of have conversations on those threat perceptions to see if they match, and thereon bring your capabilities to bear upon that. So we've had certain wonderful suggestions from this very eminent panel. All of them brought in lots of good ideas, and the floor is open for Q&A or anything that the audience has to say.
Morning, sir. Commodore Dadwal, Indian Navy. I would agree with Admiral Matsani that there is certainly a lack of transparency. However, I would argue that for transparency to be there, there has to be information. And do we have all the information for it to be passed? I don't think as of now we have the information. And as we have seen in the morning presentation, that across the IOR, non-traditional threats are spread across far and wide. Nations or the world does not take notice of non-traditional threats as a whole unless it crosses a threshold. So the piracy in Somalia crossed a threshold and the nations took notice, and therefore there was a concerted effort. My comment on this would be that we need to treat non-traditional threats as a group of nations and not leave it to individual nations, so that drugs originating from a certain destination needs to be looked at that destination itself, rather than at the end point where the nation where it is coming to is certainly interested in it. So I would seek comments of the panelists on this.
Let me answer first and then transnational nature of crime.
I agree with you. Also disagree that we have information or we don't have information. We have 3 powers in Indian Ocean, which if the satellite that they have, if they were transparent to what is happening, I'm sure the information that you don't know will know. So as long we still don't know what they see, what they have as information, we can't say we don't have information. If we are all transparent here and we know exactly what they have, then we'll know what we don't have, then we'll make a means to look for information where we don't have it. So that's where the disagreement in that regard. That I think we probably have more information than we think. It's just we're not transparent enough about it.
Kanerji, would you like to add the information versus transparency debate? The hen or the egg, which came first?
Well, actually, if I provide a regional perspective from Singapore's lens, we have a slightly different area of operations that is opposite to what the Commodore mentioned. Our waterways are very narrow, but there are still threats, and as you can see, it was highlighted that the number of incidents in our area is also reasonably high. Now, so we therefore face a different challenge, and the challenge is speed in reaction to all these threats. So we have worked on this with our very close southern neighbor, Indonesia, on these things over many years. So we have worked a mechanism in a coordinated patrol. And our agencies, and not just the navies, our national enforcement agencies pass along the info and queue operational responses from both sides all the time. And we have collaborated and cooperated in capturing many vessels doing illegal things in the very narrow Singapore Strait. So on the specific point of dealing with the threat at its origins, rather than only at its destination, is very true. But I will say that precisely because of some area operations like mine, we have no choice but to collaborate, and it can cross over to the other sites, to the other countries' problems very quickly. And that in my neighborhood is precisely the reason that both countries recognize the importance of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Since he asked all the panelists, I'll
sure.
Commodore Biruchi and Brigadier Kiswa make brief answers to this.
Yes, sure. Actually, talking about the availability of information, if it is there or not, I think the problem is the flow of information to the right agency to respond is the big problem. When you share the information, how speed or how fast that reach to the other ends. Other limitation and restrictions also. The national policy of that agency or that government to respond. And as we know, unless you have dedicated force to react really and respond swiftly, then the delay will actually, the value of this information is going to be lost and dilute unless we respond swiftly.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will comment on the issue of dealing at a threat at its origin. And I'll give a perspective of the East Africa. Actually, the reason why we had a very high number of piracy off the coast of Somalia is because of the instability in the land. And so long as the pirates had where they can take the ships or safe havens, then it was very difficult to really deal with them. But once Somalia, through AMISOM, is stabilized and has a functioning government, and that was one of the contributing factors that piracy went down. So you cannot really isolate issues that are happening on the land, for example, in Yemen or off the coast of Somalia, because they always contribute to maritime insecurity. So it is very, very important to address these issues at the origin of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Sir, I'm Captain Shashikumar. I continue from my last question regarding AIS to the last panelist, sir. So the question is particularly to Admiral Matsani. You mentioned about black shipping or black vessels being the biggest area where we are not getting information. And that is what Commodore Ops was trying to mention also, I think. We do not have information regarding black shipping. Now, most of the threats emanate from these black shipping. Now, there is no mechanism presently in force where a law enforcing agency can penalize or consider it as an offense that an AA is not working. Or you mentioned about satellites being used. Even for satellites, AAS is an enabler. Now, there is no global requirement for having AAS on all vessels. On land, every vessel is registered and anybody can flag it off and check for his registration. At sea, it is not possible. So I think globally, we may require AAS to be a compulsory, mandatory requirement for all vessels, especially in anybody's EEZ, and all maritime law enforcement agencies enabled to check them if it is not working or it is not carrying and considering it as an offense. If that is done, I think information gaps will be lessened, as well as you will be at least be able to track a particular vessel from place A to place B and get more information out of it. Your comments.
Should AIS be made compulsory? And if not, should law enforcement agencies have the powers to punish someone who doesn't have an AIS?
I agree with you in both, to make it compulsory and to punish someone who don't have. But as we know, things fail at sea. You will always say, it has failed. There's nothing you can do about it unless you can prove. And he can create that failure if he wants to, just to tell you that. And you cannot blame him for failing. But when we come to transparency, as he said before, if every country in the Indian Ocean had to report from the radar or the vessel that leaves its harbor to any of the IFC, and we start checking it and follow it by satellite, that will assist even if you claim that your AIS has failed, because we'll know where you've been, and that will be the question. You said you are coming here, straight from here, but you have been in this area, so what were you doing there? What did you drop there? So it have to work together. You still need the AIS, yes. The law enforcement must enforce it, yes. It will fail, then what? But it's important that other countries also report what vessels leave their countries. But not all countries have the radars to look just within the 12 nautical mile. Then that's where we need to assist them. Thank you.
Anyone has a different opinion about AIS being made compulsory? I think the panel is Samijit.
So, Captain Mohanty, Director of FCIOR. I have a slightly divergent view on making AIS compulsory. So, first of all, the genesis of AIS was collision avoidance. And it was only later that the security agencies realized that the AIS can also be used for tracking ships. However, since it was meant for collision avoidance, it has inherent limitations with respect to tracking. And we already see that with respect to AIS spoofing. Even if we discount AIS spoofing for a moment, what we see is AIS being broadcast. The information which can be received by security centers or information fusion centers can very well be received by nefarious agents ashore. We see that happening in Gulf of Guinea, where pirate attacks are happening more than 200 nautical miles from shore. Now, it is not possible for a pirate action group to attack a vessel without having accurate information about the movement of a vessel. And that is why ships plying in Gulf of Guinea do switch off their AIS, and that is why the IMO does not mandate ships to transmit on AIS. The mandate is only to have an AIS on board. Sir, a means is available for tracking, that is the LRIT, Long Range Identification and Tracking. All flag states receive information with respect to their flagged vessels. And this is a hard-coded information which is difficult to, or if I may say, not possible to tamper with, and therefore can be utilized for tracking of vessels in a much better way than AIS, and which will also solve the problem of that information getting into the hands of nefarious agents or perpetrators ashore. So in short, I think rather than making AIS compulsory, we may like to look at a different solution. Thank you, sir.
LRIT rather than AIS, I think that's a good point. Also conceptually, how much can you regulate at sea, since seas hate regulation, or people on the seas hate regulation. But during tea time, the CNC has been gracious enough to say that you can extend the session a little if you have more questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to ask one or two more questions. I think we can take.
Can I just comment on this?
Yeah, please.
Just to comment and make a comparison. When AIS was made for collision avoidance, yes, fair enough. I just want to make an example. The mask wearing, they were not made for COVID. Okay. But now we have realized that they will assist on COVID. Now it became mandatory to wear it. So same as AIS, it was not made for 100% right, but can it help? Yes. The point is, even that piracy is forced to have AIS at sea, because if he doesn't have, you can arrest him. So that is also part. So it works both sides. So the point is, if you insist everyone must have it. So any warship that find a vessel that have AIS at sea, we can always do something with it. So that's why it will help.
Thanks. I think that's a very strong counter argument. Any more questions? Anything at the top? Okay. I think there are. Would my panelists want to add anything very briefly? Quick comments? No? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That was a very wonderful session. I think what the two sessions today did, yesterday's two sessions sort of set out the skeletal framework for collaboration. And today's two sessions have managed to fill some flesh and blood into that skeletal framework. We are far from being perfect, of course, and I think we will. These things are constantly work in progress, so to say. But to a large extent, I think lots of very wonderful ideas have come from all the four panelists, and I think it's important because they represent, as we said, different geographical spaces with different threat perceptions, different set of capabilities that they bring to table. But in terms of model of collaboration, I think we are all agreed upon that we need much more, and maritime domain awareness is the sort of key underpinning to that, and a very illustrative example provided by the first presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to end my moderator's sort of comments on a slightly personal note, that in 2001, when the Indian Navy started its sort of outreach diplomacy, Milan, of course, began in 95, but 2001 was the first international fleet review. And the theme then was, interestingly, bridges of friendship. So you sort of started to build those bridges of friendship. 2006, Vizag, first time saw a presidential fleet review. I was captain of one of the ships there at that time. And that's when you saw what Vizag could put up, its magnificent sea face, and how people can participate, and the scope for international fleet review, which was manifested in 2016, a decade later. And then the theme changed to United Through Oceans. So we had made that transition now. Having built those bridges, we realized that we had to be united through oceans. Now, we're not always united at oceans, and that will always be there. But being united through oceans and realizing that is important. And about half a decade later, 2022, when you have the Milan, when you talk of camaraderie, cohesion and collaboration. These are the nuts and bolts in which you can stay united through oceans. And harnessing collective maritime competence, the theme of this seminar, takes that further. And as we move along, I guess that provides us a certain formula in terms of how we can do it. And I think this international seminar has given us lots of ideas. I'd like to personally thank the CNC and the organizers. Having been the one who organized the international seminar at the IFR, I realize what it takes and means to do this. So thank you, everyone. I'd above all like to thank the audience for a splendid sort of contribution over all the sessions. Thank you. Thanks to my panelists, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sirs, for sharing your views. May I request on stage the Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Naval Command, Vice Admiral Bishwajit Dasgupta, for felicitating the panelists. Thank you, sirs. May I request the panelists to please take your seat in the auditorium, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of today's proceedings, I now request Vice Admiral Bishwajit Dasgupta, the Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Naval Command, to deliver the closing address of the International Maritime Seminar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a great pleasure and a wonderful experience sitting through the seminar over yesterday and today. And I think a lot of good things were said. A lot of fresh ideas were thrown up. And I think I have learnt a lot from what many of the speakers have said. Our session chairs, very eminent people, have done a fabulous job of conducting the sessions very, very crisply and professionally. So a big thank you to all of you as I start my closing remarks. When we conceptualized this seminar, we had thought that we would have maybe junior to middling officers speaking and expressing their ideas, but to our great, what should I say, to our great pleasure and to our great happiness, we realized that many chiefs of navies and heads of delegations and senior members of all the delegations expressed the desire to be speakers. And that really thrilled us very much, because we knew that we would be getting a lot of filtered and crisp wisdom out of so many years of experience of the senior delegation members and chiefs of navies. I am personally absolutely delighted at the presentations that the speakers have made over the last 2 days. Let me also share an anecdote with you. There was a multinational group of people who were staying at a hotel. And when they went down for breakfast, somebody said, "Let's have a French toast." So all of them went and picked up a French toast. And there was one gentleman from France over there. And he said, "I'm from France, this is definitely not a French toast." So perspectives differ. And what you think is a French toast may not be a French toast for somebody else. So the presentations from the various speakers have brought out loud and clear the differing perceptions on maritime security, different things that get them worried, and different issues that nations and navies place on their priority list. When some country is interested in violation of freedom of the seas, some other country may be interested in prevention of illegal fishing, a third country may be more interested in fighting climate change. And therefore, I think if we have to speak the same language and if we have to collaborate with each other, we need to understand exactly what makes each other tick. And that, I think, has been achieved. We have taken a few steps forward in that direction through Milan and through the International Maritime Seminar. A very large number of issues, concepts have been thrown up. While I could take an hour to recount all of them, but I think one or two or maybe a few of them I'd like to mention here, which has given us food for thought. Firstly is, how far do you go and balance sovereignty with collaboration? How do countries calibrate their cooperation? There are poor countries, there are rich countries, there are liberal democracies, we have single-party governments, we have autocracies, we have dictatorships. Each of them have got a different way of looking at security, a different way of looking at maritime security, and a different way of looking at cooperation. If a country has global ambitions, their way of looking at things will be entirely different from a country which is just bothered about its close neighborhood. So we have to be conscious of what kind of collaboration and cooperation that each of us is willing to do with others. Much has been said about a rules-based order and compliance of the rules-based order. Rules-based order are for those people who respect rules. There are, like it is said, that when you put a lock on your door at night, that lock is meant for the honest thief. a dishonest thief will break the lock and still burgle your house. So, a rules-based order is dependent on people obeying rules. And if you have people disobeying rules, it will lead to conflict. Now, when we talk about conflict and cooperation, how far are we going to take collaboration? History has shown us that other than the world wars, nobody is willing to fight your war for you. You will have to fight your own war. And therefore, we must not be delusional about collaboration and cooperation. Because if we go into that domain and that realm, we may be starting off another world war, which nobody wants. Therefore, we have to be calibrated in our approach to collaboration and do things where it works. Do things in ones and twos, do things in small groups. The larger your grouping becomes, cooperation becomes that much more difficult to coordinate. So there are different models, like somebody has said, no one size fits all in maritime cooperation. We have to find the best answer to the problem at hand at any point in time. There was some other very good concepts brought out about a possible territorialization of the seas, which used to be free once upon a time. So it's worth thinking about. Is that going to happen in the future? If it does look like happening, what are we going to do? Technology. Using technology for maritime cooperation and other things is a double-edged sword. Technology also brings with it the capability for massive destruction. Therefore, when you're talking about unmanned systems or unmanned weapon systems, and you're talking about long-range weapons on board platforms, and as naval forces, if they are postured in a particular place in the oceans, there may be certain nations that find it threatening. So while we are very excited about technology, we must always remember that it has the capability for creating fears and destruction. I particularly liked a concept that the chief of the JMSDF said, that the oceans are an international public good. And I think that really should be the guiding spirit of collaboration at sea, that we use oceans for the common good. Another thing which is really interesting and has come out is use of the cyber domain for gray zone operations, which we are seeing manifesting almost on a weekly or a fortnightly basis. Somebody is getting affected. Lawfare and laws at sea. International law by itself is difficult to enforce. And therefore, unless domestic laws are aligned to international laws and we act against errant entities in accordance with domestic law, international law may not go very far for us. Therefore, if domestic laws are strong, in line with commonly held beliefs and UNCLOS, we may be able to do a little better at sea. There are newly emerging maritime threats, which was brought out in the last two sessions. And what comes out from this is wherever there is a dependence, you will find a threat growing. We are more and more dependent on the cyberspace, on the internet, on networks, and therefore you have a developing threat in that direction. Wherever there is a lack of capability, there is a developing threat. What Admiral Monty Khanna brought out, that if you are a small country with a small maritime force, yet you have a large EEZ, you have a lack of capability. And that lack of capability will bring with it a threat that will emerge from somewhere, and somebody would like to exploit that vulnerability of yours. So these are areas where we need to think and collaborate and cooperate so that our interests are protected, individual and collective. There was an interesting thing which was brought out in the last session about white shipping and non-white shipping. Yes, there is a problem about sharing information beyond a point, unless you have information sharing agreements between nations. But I think sharing of information on white shipping is a good start, because at least you can work by elimination. So what is not white is of interest. And thereafter you narrow down depending on how much more information you have. So I think it's a very good start, and we should build up on what we have and get more things into the picture, get satellites, get more agreements, get more centers, and get the information loop going. And one final point that I have is that it has been a great education for us. And as far as the Indian government goes and the Indian Navy goes, I am very happy that our newly appointed National Maritime Security Coordinator has got to hear the views of all of you who have spoken. And I think he's got a fair idea of what concerns our friendly foreign countries in the maritime domain. And to my mind, that is a great benefit of having him here. And it's been wonderful that he's joined us as the session chair for the first session. So these were my closing remarks really on the professional content of the seminar. Just a few points which, stuck to me. Now let me come to my more important and very pleasant duty of saying thank you to everybody. Firstly, I would like to thank all the speakers who would have definitely prepared long and hard to stand before an international audience and deliver their piece. And we are very, very happy to have heard all of you, and we have heard you with great interest. And I have directed the organizers of the seminar to bring out proceedings of the seminar, which will be shared to you in whatever form is the best. I would also like to thank the session chairs, Admiral Ashok Kumar, Admiral Monty Khanna, Admiral Vishwanathan, and Commodore Kesnur for brilliantly chairing all the 4 sessions. They are our best people, and they have been in this business for a very, very long time, and they know what they're talking about. And they are able to guide thoughts on these subjects. So we very carefully chosen our session chairs. We're very, very grateful to all of them that they agreed the first time that I requested them to come down. The participants who have been very active and attentive, I hope we have taken away good points from this seminar, and we are able to implement at least a few. To the chiefs of navies and the senior delegates for giving Milan 2022 the kind of importance that you have, and we are grateful for that. The organizers of the seminar, my flag officer submarines, COMCOS, and their teams, for putting together a seminar which is befitting the stature of this event. INS Satwana is our submarine training base in the Vizag Naval Station, which is essentially the custodian of this auditorium and its real estate. And thank you for preparing the auditorium, looking after our tea sessions and all that. It takes a lot of work. Thank you very much. I have a team led by the CNAI who looked after the bilats and other things that happened on the sidelines of the seminar. So they have done work for that. Thank you. Members of the media and my own PR team who have done a good job in projecting Milan 2022 and all our important activities to the media. So they've done a fine job. There are a host of others who have been part of this event, whether they are people looking after traffic or parking or liaison or photography, band, service providers, hundreds of people who have actually worked behind the scenes. I would also like to thank our Commodore in charge Milan, Commodore Manish Dhakre, who has been at this planning activity for at least the last 6 to 8 months, and working to every last detail, and thereafter fanning out individual responsibilities to various people so that we can conduct Milan. I would also like to thank our own Chief of the Naval Staff for his guidance and direction whenever there was a requirement to get a higher level direction for conduct of Milan 2022. The foreign cooperation staff at Naval Headquarters and the foreign service attaches who are resident in Delhi, you people have done a fantastic job in being in touch with us as well as your parent country and making sure that everything goes on smoothly with your delegations. So thank you for that. And finally, there may be many that I have not been able to mention. In the armed forces, we have a tradition of saluting the unknown soldier. So here I would like to say a big thank you to the unknown worker, many of whose maybe we will not even know their names, but who would have worked behind the scenes to make all the events a success. So on behalf of all of you, I also thank the unknown worker. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and an honor to host all of you. And I hope there is a next time in Vizag where some of you will be able to rejoin. Thank you very much. Good luck and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this seminar, I thank you once again for your presence. We look forward to our interactions over the next few days. Have a good day.